Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is Lynn, and today what I want to do is show you how I like to craft with the things that I often use in my crafting, which is gorgeous pattern papers and beautiful ephemera. And as well, maybe change things up, mix things up a little bit with the use of the Palette Scout, which has become one of my favorite tools, if not my most favorite tool for creating and coming up with color combinations to craft with. So because I use pattern papers and in particular ephemera so often, where I like to start is actually to pick my ephemera that I think I might like to use on my card. So this is from Pumpkin and Cider. It's one of the two ephemera packs, and the coordinating papers are from the box of the month from the Not Too Shabby shop. And there's lots of really fun, cute images. I think I might like to craft with this one, but I like to try to, if I can, maybe find a couple few different things to collage together to maybe create a little bit of a scene or create a little bit of a story. So I might not use everything that I'm picking out, but I like to give myself some options so that I can start creating. And I love that the ephemera does have similar images and sometimes the exact same images but differently scaled, so you can kind of pick and choose what you think might work best for the scene that you want to create, and the scale of the project that you want to design. And so I might start there. I think those are some good choices to start with. So having chosen my ephemera, I know whatever I do, I want to match to the colors, because this, once it's collaged up, will essentially create my focal image. And so some collection of these images. So what I want to do is start off by identifying the main color here. And I think for me that's going to be the sweatshirt on her. I think is a very dominant color. Now, the easy thing to do would be to just grab some of the gorgeous pattern paper that comes with this paper pad called Fall Florals, because it definitely shares the same color theme. But let's see if we can try something a little bit different and a little bit unexpected by creating our own palette rather than relying on the palette that is already a part of the paper pad. So I generally will just pick out the cards that I'll need. There's instructions and other cards that come, and I do have a first look video and a lot of different videos on how I use the Palette Scout, so you might find more there. I'm going to set those aside for now. And the thing that I want to do firstly is to use this card, which has all of the colors listed, and I'm going to try to find, now this particular sweater, it might not match very specifically to a color on here, mostly because this does look like it's very toned down. And these are really saturated. It looks like pure value colors. So kind of hard, but if I had to guess, it's going to be somewhere in this reddish purple range. So I would steer clear of the reddish orange. So I'm thinking hibiscus, ibis, jewel. And then beyond that, it gets very purpley. So I think hibiscus, ibis, and jewel are right around the neighborhood that I want to first start to explore. So then I'll bring these cards, because these will show all of the pure intensity and all the tones. So I think I was hibiscus, ibis, and jewel. So those are the three I was considering. That gets me, it's a process of narrowing. So what I want to ultimately do is find a good match. And I've Oh, look at that. I've got hibiscus up at the top here, and I think if I look at the tone number 2, I feel like that's a really good match. And I can see some of the mauve colors in here. That straight out of the gates looks like that might be the one, but let's just explore some of our other options just in case there's a better fit. So that's definitely a contender. Ibis could maybe work. It's definitely a little bit more plummy and less reddish. And this is Jewel is starting to get too purple, I feel, and it's losing a lot of the red. So I think hibiscus it is. So I can put these two back, and I do like to keep this in alphabetical order. So I don't need these anymore. And I'm going to bring out our hibiscus color cards, because we'll definitely have that as part of the color palette that I build. Now, to create a color palette using hibiscus, all you have to do is flip to the back side, because this gives you, and these are rooted in color theory, but you don't necessarily have to understand exactly how they are arrived at, or even really the names, the formal names for them. You can really just look at the colors and the shapes, because that's all I go by. So for example, if I wanted to do a complementary color palette, I would just pick hibiscus is a red. I just group these into large colors, so it's red square, and then I would pick a green square as its complement. So then I would bring myself down to the green section and then bring out the squares. And it's as easy as that. So that's the complement, but you'll see here there's also the split complement, and instead of using green squares, it's a green triangle and a green circle. So let's bring ourselves back to our cards here, and pine gives me green triangles, and the green circles are reed. Now the exact names of these don't really matter either, because they're really named so that you can easily put them back into rainbow order by just alphabetizing them. And so if I look at these here, the cards, you can use the front or the back. The back has the tones, the more muted tones, and the front has the pure intensities. So if I flip to the back of both of these, and then I add my hibiscus in here, this is kind of what it would look like if I were to just use all the tones as part of my selection to build my palette. But there's nothing to say that you can't pull in some pure intensities and mix that in with your tones. So if we look at fall florals, let me just bring out one of these gorgeous pattern papers, and let me just show you, if I had to pick cards that actually matched the palette that this pattern includes, I would pick maybe the tone of pine number 4. You can see some of the light in there. I would maybe pick the tone of pine number 1. So you can see just in the leaves here, look at how they've got some nice contrast of this dark and the light. Now when you come down here, you get a little bit more of a reddish green, and that would put us more in the reed territory. And so we might have something more like, I see a little bit of number 3 here, a little bit of that. And you can always flip to the other side to see if you're picking up maybe some pure intensities, but I think this is more of a tone, and maybe even the darker reed for some of those shadow areas. And here, I think, maybe some of the pure intensity would work. So now we have some nice color variation. And then, of course, our main hibiscus color, I see a lot of that in there too. So here's number 4. I think it's probably the tone. And if I flip, I can see a little bit of some of this number 2 in the pure intensity, just in the flowers, which are like a living thing. So maybe you want the flowers to look maybe a little bit more fresh and vibrant. Even though it's a dark color, it's the pure intensity of it, so it doesn't look quite as muted. And same in these shadows. I think this number 1 hibiscus is represented in here, but not the muted. I mean, probably both, but I see a lot of the pure intensity as well. So if I needed to build a palette that was maybe based off of this paper, you can kind of see actually that the design of the paper is rooted in this particular color palette of a split complement that uses hibiscus and its split complementary colors. So that's that just kind of reinforces that these color palettes work. This is a printed paper pad, and it's a gorgeous design, and it's evident that they have used a split complementary color palette to achieve this design, and that's why it looks so well balanced and so pleasing to the eye. There's some neutrals in here too, like the tans and maybe some vanilla like cream colors, but really a lot of the colors fit within this palette. Now, one of the things, especially for projects where maybe I want to do something perhaps a little bit unexpected, I might try to find a palette that is a little bit different, that has a little bit of a curveball in it. And so this would be gorgeous. And if I wanted to stick to this palette, tried and true, I could just use the paper pad. But what if I wanted to use these bits of ephemera, maybe some of the papers in this paper pad, but maybe throw in an unexpected twist. So when I look at the options here, the triadic color combination really looks like there might be some curveballs to it with the yellow and the blue added to the palette. So let's explore what that might look like. I know that this is a great option and a safe choice because it's represented in the paper pad, but can I build something that may be a little bit more bold and unexpected? So we're going to start with hibiscus because that's in my ephemera that I feel like is what I want to use. And to create a triadic color palette, I need the blue square and the yellow square. So I'm gonna hop on down to the blue section and look for squares. So in the blue section, bluish purple, I've got triangles here. Here's some squares. And on the other end of that, I have circles. So these Neptune cards are the blue squares. So that's what I want to pull. And then I need a yellow square as well. So popping on over to the yellow section, I see triangles. I'll skip the triangles, and it looks like buttercup gives me the squares, whereas carrots are also sort of in that yellow family, but those are circles. I want squares. So I've got square hibiscus, the Neptune, and the buttercup. So with all of my cards, I can start to build a triadic color combination. Now, let's say in this paper pad, there are some other really gorgeous papers, and perhaps not so much the variety of colors as the one that I just showed, but perhaps I can use maybe something a little bit more solid like this one, or something a little bit more monochromatic like the back of this, or this, which feels very monochromatic as well. So maybe I want to use the same paper pad, but instead of adopting the color combination of these tones with the greens, since green isn't in the triadic color combination, but yellow is, so maybe I'll pick this up since it has some of that lovely gold. So that looks like it might be a good option to incorporate. And we'll stick with those as options for now. And now that I've got a couple of different options for papers and what I might like to use as my focal image, let's start to build a palette so that maybe we can start to introduce some of these other colors, but in other ways besides the pattern paper. So I'm gonna stick with maybe the pure tones of hibiscus. In particular, I really see a lot of these, especially in this one, you see a lot of the fresher, brighter colors, like even number 3, I see hints of number 3 there. But my focal image is a little bit more muted, so I think I might find at least one that is more muted that would be a closer match, but darker. So that's going to be sort of my anchor color, is this hibiscus, so that maybe this would be the frame to everything. And that's kind of represented here, a nice dark print. And I think I might like something a little bit lighter as well. That might more resemble this. So that could be a number 5 or a number 4 hibiscus. And I kind of feel like it's more muted. So I think I'm going to take the number 4. So right there, I've got some nice dark, some nice light, some good contrast there. And I'll set these aside. We'll see if we need some more accents of hibiscus or not. If I end up actually using this pattern paper, that would include some of this more pure tone, pure intensity hibiscus, but I'm not sure I'm actually going to use this. I'm definitely using this as inspiration for now to choose my colors, but at the moment I think I'm gonna aim really to use this pattern paper with that ephemera. So I think these two colors really will match that nicely. So then let's bring in our blues. Let's pick some blues and let's pick some yellows. And when I'm picking my yellows, I'm having a look at this paper for inspiration since it's already got some yellows in it. So let's look at Buttercup. Here are the pure intensity of Buttercup, and I don't work too hard to always keep these in numerical order, but if you wanted and you ordered them 1 to 5, it would go dark to light in that order. And I can kind of see in this paper, if we're drawing this as inspiration and we're also potentially considering to use this in the project, I can see that it has maybe some of this bright Buttercup in some of the lighter areas. But let's flip it over and look at the muted colors. And it kind of looks like the muted colors might be a better match. But if we really wanted to punch up the yellow, maybe as a bright spot, as a highlight, we could use it in its pure intensity. And so that's kind of in the middle. So we've got a number 1, 4, and 3. It's kind of nice to have different values when you're picking your palette so that there's good contrast between light and dark. And I do see some darker colors in this yellow here. And if you flip to the back, you get those more muted colors that are toned down with some gray. So it's basically your tones or your pure intensities with gray added. So they're a little bit dialed back some, and they don't look quite as bright and vibrant, which has this really lovely soft effect to it. So I would say I'm seeing I don't think I need too much more Buttercup actually. I kind of feel like either this pure intensity or the muted, but I kind of like the brightness that this brings to the palette. So that might be really lovely. And then we're really gonna go outside of the box for me and my comfort zone, and I'm gonna throw in some blue. So let's have a look at the Neptune cards. So when I look at the Neptune cards, this too has 5 cards, and if you order them from 1 to 5, you'll have 1 being the darkest and 5 being the lightest. And now I want to, because I don't have pattern paper that I'm drawing inspiration from, and this is gonna be the color that feels like it's going to be that unexpected element to crafting with this collection, because everything that's curated in this, both the ephemera pack and the paper pack, is it doesn't have a triadic color combination that is being represented here. And so we're going to take some elements from this, the papers and the ephemera, and throw a little bit of a twist to it. And I think that's what's going to make it lovely but unexpected. And I now am going to be more driven by my existing palette that I've created so far, rather than drawing inspiration from materials that I'm considering for my project. So all of this is just to give my project some options. So let's see what I think might look nice here. If I flip to the back, this is going to give me some of the tones, and I can just sort of put them up against my palette that I've already decided on so far, just to see what might look interesting. And this is a lot of the fun of it, is really just kind of exploring your options. It's so easy to kind of play with these cards and bring them in and out of your palette just to try them out and see how they look together. And it's nice to have that range. Now, you don't necessarily need to have every single number represented, kind of like what I'm having here. You can always kind of have two number ones if you want a couple different options for your darker colors, and that's surrounding your brighter colors with darker colors can really help to make them pop more. And so maybe having a number 2 in the blue here will look kind of interesting. I kind of like how this is looking a little bit. And I wonder if bringing in another spot of something kind of bright, so that a lot of it's the hibiscus, and maybe there's just little pops here and there of the buttercup. And one of the things I like to do is, let's say I start to hold these and position them in such a way that what's visible is how much of that color I intend on using. So let's say I want it to mostly be hibiscus, but I just want a sliver of buttercup, and maybe just as an accent, a sliver of Neptune. What I might do is then kind of cover this up, just so that I can see what does it look like if I'm using these 3 hibiscus colors and just a little bit of buttercup and Neptune as small little accents. So that also helps to give you a little bit of an idea for your color palette, how you might like to use them, because something that has these 2 colors very heavily and these only a little bit might look very different. So besides just picking the colors, it's also how you use them and the proportion of how much you use that particular color in your actual color palette, or your final project, I should say. And so I don't know that I necessarily want a bright blue. I want the blue to be a little bit of a surprise, but not an in-your-face surprise, because I actually want this yellow to maybe be like a nice little bright spot that has good contrast, and will help to have our ephemera here shine a little bit. Because if I put her on top of more of hibiscus, it might all start to blend into each other a little bit too much. But her against a contrasting color, but still something that goes nicely, might work a little bit better to emphasize her and have those colors come to light a little bit better. And so the blue Neptune might actually be that a nice foundation for collaging the ephemera, and the yellow might just be a nice accent to it. So I kind of like this number 2, and I think this palette might be what I go with. And so now that I've decided on my palette, I have a rough idea. I think the yellow is going to be very minimal. I think the blue might be a foundation for the ephemera pieces that I've chosen, because that's going to really help these pop a little bit and have enough contrast for them. And then having maybe some of these background papers in the hibiscus will be the background where everything begins on the project. So let's actually make a card using this palette. Okay, so I am going to speed up the rest of this video, so the actual card making is going to go pretty fast. I've just got my card base here. This is an A2 size card, and it measures 4¼ by 5½. I did pick some solid color cardstock that I thought would be a close match to that Neptune color, and I'm gonna start my card off covering the card base entirely. So that blue panel I cut to 4¼ by 5½. And then I'm actually going to use my Easy Wonder die number 3, and I'm only going to cut the postage grid. Now, I wanted to get a section of the pattern paper that felt the most interesting, and so I was twisting and turning it here and there just to find where I wanted to position, or how I wanted to position the Easy Wonder die, so that I could have some interesting areas of those nice large floral prints showing. At the time, I was actually thinking that I probably wouldn't cover every single grid location. So that's why it was kind of important to me to position it so that I would have some interesting, a little bit of an interesting composition. But you'll see in the end, ultimately, I did actually cover all of those grid spots. So I do want to put this lighter pink, it's kind of like a dusty rose. I want to put that behind the pattern paper, because mostly that pattern paper is fairly dark, and so I like having the contrast of the very dark blue, the light dusty rose, and then the pattern paper that's mostly dark, but it does have some lighter spots and some midtones and some highlights. But that gives us some more contrast, and that way the pattern paper shows a little bit better. And next, I'm going to use my Easy Wonder die number 3 add-on set to cut the rectangles and square that you can use to layer into each of these postage grid locations. Now, I mentioned that I wanted to use that lovely, like very dark indigo blue as a foundation behind my ephemera pieces, mostly because these ephemera pieces do have that white border, so having again a very dark background gives good contrast, and also having a layer of the blue in between all of the hibiscus colors, it feels like it helps to make the images read a little bit better. But as I was trying to figure out how I want to incorporate the yellow that's part of the palette, initially I thought I would do that through some of the pattern papers, because there's that lovely marbled pattern paper that had some of the I think streaks of gold. And that got me thinking, why not just use gold as an accent? And so I die cut some gold glitter cardstock, which I'm just going to use to tile on top of this postage grid. And I thought about adding a little bit of that same pink color that was our second layer, but I decided against that. So I'm just going to use the dark indigo blue and gold as my layers on top of the postage grid. And I think that works out pretty well. It's going to give me some lovely sparkle and shine in the gold glitter card, and it also gives me some of those darker tiles that I can layer on top of and have some really nice contrast. When I cut the Easy Wonder die initially, when I cut out this postage grid, I did get a couple of images that are meant to layer into these postage grid locations, and I'm actually going to use them. They're a bit abstract. You can't really tell exactly what they are because it's just part of that floral print. But I thought that it helps to, because I covered so much of the pattern paper, it helps to bring that back to the foreground. So these pieces here were actually part of the pattern paper that I cut my postage grid out of. And by layering them back in, it kind of helps to remind us of the pattern paper that now is probably about 90% covered up. But I like bringing it to the foreground a little bit, and having that layer of blue in between helps to, again, just give it a bit more contrast. Now, I also played around with adding a different shape to this because I'm filling some of these grid locations with ephemera, but and I need to fit a sentiment in here somehow, but that circular sentiment just didn't feel right to me. It felt like I needed to put more ephemera in this third location here. I try to stick to the rule of odd numbers. So I've got the blue indigo tiles or grid squares and rectangles. There's 3 of those. There's only 2 of the gold glitter, but I added some gold metallic thread behind the gal. So that's like a third spot of gold. And then with the ephemera, it feels like I need 3 clusters or 3 elements. And so that's why the sentiment to me didn't feel right in that lower corner there, at least not the circular one. So I stamped out another sentiment, just a straight one this time. And I'm going to add that to the cluster of ephemera that I'll add to that other gold tile there. And by covering up a lot of the gold, it kind of achieves what I was initially going for, where the yellow is just a little bit of an accent, and that way it's helps it to pop a little bit as just those little pops of sparkle. And it also helps that everywhere that I've used gold, it's a different texture. So we've got the glitter gold, and then we've got the metallic thread, and so that helps to also make it a little bit special. Now I'm going to use some 3D glue gel to adhere the ephemera. 3D glue gel is really nice because I can just squeeze it out of this gun-like dispenser. It's got a nice trigger to it, so it's pretty ergonomic. And it's nice because it's so thick that it can hold its dimension. You just don't want to push it down too far. And it has a really great stick to it, but it's also really nice because you can kind of push it down as much or as little as you want. And that's really great if you are adhering things over an uneven surface. So this sentiment, for example, part of it will be on top of the candle, which is on top of the hat, and then part of it is going to be on the grid itself. So there's lots of different levels and layers under that sentiment, and that glue gel can just go where it needs to go, but still be nice and level on the card. So here's a final close-up look. And I think this turned out really nice. It's an unexpected color palette, For me, I'm not really used to crafting with this palette. It's not one that I would have chosen, but that's the reason I really love playing with the Palette Scout and using it in my crafting, because I can discover these different color combinations and break out of my color rut. If you're interested in crafting with anything that I've used today, I'm going to leave links to everything in the description box below, and that's going to include the Not Too Shabby subscription box as well as the Palette Scout. Thanks for checking out my video, and until next time, happy crafting and have a fabulous day. Bye!